Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath, and this is a non-spoiler review of Guy Ritchie's latest film, The Gentleman. Now, I've been a big fan of Guy Ritchie for a long time, going back to the days of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. I caught this one on DVD. This was one of the first DVDs that were released when the format was new. So many of us young film fans at the time found this movie and the director through Lock, Stock. And then I was lucky enough to see Snatch, the follow-up, on the big screen when it hit my theaters back in the day. And ever since then, I've been a fan of Guy Ritchie. It made quite an impression on me. He captures a lot of the things that I love. There's a lot of homage to like 70s cinema. Of course, he's a British filmmaker, so he brings this unique, there's a lot of Cockney in his films as well. And he's just really a director that I enjoyed, that I connected with. And it's been interesting to watch his career develop over time because he went on to have great success in the studio system. You guys know the Aladdin movie that came out in 2019, the live-action version of Disney's Aladdin, is a Guy Ritchie movie. And I actually really enjoyed that movie. It's one of my favorite movies of 2019. I will link to our review right here in the corner of this video. But that is a different Guy Ritchie. That is a Guy Ritchie playing in the corporate studio system. The Guy Ritchie that directed The Gentleman, wrote, produced, and directed The Gentleman, it's this Guy Ritchie, but 20 years on. If that makes, like, of course it is, right? But it's proof that the guy who made Aladdin is still making the movies about the eccentric gangsters with, you know, the foul-mouthed Cockneys, just all the stuff, all of his trademarks are all over this movie, but it's ratcheted up. It's a guy that's 20 years further down the line who has way more power, who has way more control. And it's just really interesting because it seems like, you know, that Aladdin movie, we're talking about how he seems to have done one for them, one for him. And that one for him seems to have really given him total control over what he was going for here. And I really like The Gentleman. I like it quite a bit. Hugh Grant is fantastic. I would love to see more roles like this for Hugh Grant because there's nothing likable about him. He's as slimy as the day is long. And Hugh Grant, clearly, while he plays a lot of the upper crust romantic leads in so many of these movies, you know, Four Weddings and a Funeral, so many romantic comedies for Hugh Grant, but then he has this sordid past as well. So there is a little bit of a scumbag somewhere in there that he's able to tap into. So the character in this movie is really interesting. I liked it quite a bit. I want to see more of this Hugh Grant, more of the Hugh Grant that's not afraid to get his hands dirty, to go to some really greasy places and to be a greasy character. Charlie Hunnam is really cool in this movie as well. You know, so many of the things that we're talking about Guy Ritchie's career, that the dark humor, the violence, the wordplay, like I think it's been kind of maybe overlooked in the last 20 years or so. What a great writer he is. The turn of phrase. There's a line in this movie where he's describing this character whose name is Dry Eye, and he's like, Taiwanese, Pekingese, on your knees. It's just this very fluid, poetic, lyrical sense of writing that I really think Guy Ritchie excels at. But here's the thing, you guys, I really enjoyed this movie, but, by the way, Matthew McConaughey is fantastic in this movie. But, what's the but? It almost feels like too much, man. It's just so much of what he does. It almost feels like someone, you know, whereas this guy that made Lock, Stock, and Snatch is playing within boundaries, budgetary boundaries, boundaries with access to talent, what he could get made. You know, now Brad Pitt is, of course, in Snatch, but if you know the story behind this movie, he got access to Brad Pitt because Brad Pitt was just a really big fan of Lock, Stock, and Brad Pitt was also not one of the biggest stars in Hollywood in the, you know, around the millennium era when that came out. But Matthew McConaughey, you guys, is one of the, he's high up on the A-list. This is just the Guy Ritchie with no restraints, no boundaries, no borders. It seems like anything he wanted to do, he did do. This movie has about 3 endings. It has about as many endings as the Lord of the Rings trilogy has. That's an exaggeration. I'm kind of just making a joke about that. But it just has several endings. You're like, this feels like the ending, and then there's another ending. And they're like, well, I think we're done now, but then there's another ending. And none of those things are necessarily bad. And if you're on board with the movie, that all just feels really cool. You're just like, yeah, more of it. Just bring it on. And I kind of am in that place where I'm just like, you know, wherever you want to take us, whatever you want to do, whatever music you want to play. You know, there's a needle drop on a vinyl 45 in this movie, and it's like that's so Guy Ritchie. The nods to 70s film, not just 70s film of the UK, but of course also 70s film of Hollywood. All of his influences are just they're right there. But listen, the story is really great. The acting performances are fantastic. Again, Hugh Grant. I would like to see an Oscar nomination for Hugh Grant. We tend to reward people for, like, Joaquin Phoenix lost a lot of weight for the Joker. We tend to reward things like that. Can we reward Hugh Grant for getting in touch with his inner slime ball and presenting that to audiences? Because I would like to see that. But I don't know, there's just a real cool, a sense of cool. Guy Ritchie's got that sense of cool, but it's also just him. Where he is now is all over the screen. If you've heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast, everything this cat seems interested in is in this movie. Like, he's in that podcast, he talks for like 20 minutes about the importance of a gentlemanly, a cut suit, like tailored suit, and presenting yourself, fashion, just presenting yourself as a gentleman of fashion. That's in this movie. Like some weird chivalry code about what a man is supposed to be. That's in here. The lyrical stuff is in here. The homage to the movie. There's a conversation about The Conversation, the Gene Hackman movie. There's just a lot of little nods. It's just filled with, it's like Guy Ritchie's personality all over the page, in a way that, we always thought that, like, that's what makes these movies so great, is they feel like a director. There is a unique handmade quality. You're connecting with a very specific creator. They're not movies that are made by corporations or committees. They're movies that are made by a dude, like one guy with a vision. The Gentleman is very much that, but it is also that in excess. For me, I think maybe it's just a little excessive. It could have had a little bit. I think maybe someone could have been like, do we really need that ending? Can we leave that one out? Can we cut this? But on the other hand, that's what makes this movie what it is. It's that excess. It's the excess of Guy Ritchie's signature flavor, whatever that may be, that makes this exactly what it is. So as a handmade film, I champion it as an extension of Guy Ritchie's personality. I champion it. I like this movie quite a bit. I will definitely be buying this when it comes to home media, revisiting it throughout the years. This goes, he's made lots of movies since these two, but these two are my favorite. And now, of course, The Gentleman joins that in. It's a number 3 in line for these. In case you're interested, Lock, Stock is my number 1. Snatch is my number 2, and then we skip all the way ahead. This movie, The Gentleman, now becomes my number 3. Kind of a loose trilogy of Guy Ritchie's. Just him, his essence of Ritchie on screen. Guys, thanks. That's all I have to say about this movie, really. Did you see it? What did you think about it? Thank you for hanging out with me. I would love to hear more about what you think about Guy Ritchie, his films, his career. Have I overlooked a hidden gem in the career of Guy Ritchie? Do I need to give Swept Away a second look? It's been a long time since I watched that movie, but maybe I do. Maybe it's time to give Guy Ritchie's Swept Away, his remake of Swept Away, another look. Guys, thanks again. I appreciate you very much. Take care. And until next time, I will catch you later.